Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. It's always fun to return to Edgar Cayce, and today I want to focus on Edgar Cayce's discussion of soulmates. Edgar Cayce, often referred to as the Sleeping Prophet, was a notable American clairvoyant who purportedly possessed the ability to enter into a sleep-like state and provide psychic readings to individuals seeking help. Cayce's readings covered a wide range of topics from health and astrology to reincarnation and dreams. Among these topics, he also touched upon concepts that resonate with what many people today refer to as soulmates and twin flames. We've covered Edgar Cayce in some incredible past episodes. Recently, we discussed Edgar Cayce on Atlantis, Thoughts Are Things, Edgar Cayce on communicating with the dead in your dreams, Edgar Cayce on dreams, Edgar Cayce on the Book of Revelation. I find that it's interesting to discuss the teachings of Edgar Cayce, but in many respects, it's difficult to read the Edgar Cayce readings. He read in a sort of King James English, which at times can be a little boring or hard to understand. So I've tried to give you the basic teachings behind what he says and just read sparingly some of his major readings. In terms of soulmates, according to Cayce's readings, they're individuals with whom we have shared experiences in past lifetimes, and with whom we form strong, harmonious connections in our current life. The concept of soulmates in Cayce's work is closely tied to the idea of spiritual growth and karma. He suggested that soulmates come together for mutual spiritual development and to work through karmic debts from past lives. It's important to note that Cayce's concept of soulmates isn't limited to romantic relationships. Soulmates could also be friends, family members, or anyone with whom one has a deep spiritual connection. Twin flames are not really referred to in the Cayce readings, but are often associated with similar metaphysical concepts. He refers to the idea that a soul can split into two bodies, essentially being two halves of a whole. This concept goes beyond the idea of soulmates to suggest a mirror-like relationship where the twin flames reflect each other's strengths, weaknesses, and growth areas. Twin flames are thought to have an intense spiritual and emotional connection, and their relationship is often described as being both challenging and deeply transformative, aimed at accelerating spiritual awakening and growth. Cayce's approach to these concepts was deeply spiritual and rooted in the idea of soul evolution and learning through relationships, and he emphasized the importance of love, understanding, and patience in all relationships, and suggested that our connections with others are opportunities for personal and spiritual development. While Cayce's readings offer a unique perspective on these concepts, it's worth noting that interpretations of soulmates and soul partnerships and twin flames vary widely, and the terms are used in many different contexts beyond Cayce's work. But I wanted to share and discuss what Cayce had to say about this particular topic. Now, when I say the word soulmate, what does it mean to you? I find it really fascinating when I ask others about what it means to them. The definitions are always different. The words conjure up images of candlelit evenings and laughter and romance, moonlit walks, passionate embraces, and unconditional love. A soulmate relationship is often perceived as the ultimate connection with another human being. It is the ideal union between two individuals that everyone has imagined at some point in their lives. It is a connection between two people that has been portrayed in stories, legends, books, and movies. It is a bond in which dreams can be realized, and one's selfhood is encouraged to blossom and grow, cultivated by the one we call soulmate. Such a relationship has even been perceived as one's other half. Who doesn't desire such a relationship? For some, a soulmate relationship is one in which there are no challenges, no conflicts, no strife, only the opportunity to explore one another as equals, sharing joys, consoling sorrows, and being ever supportive through the challenges of life. Others, perhaps more realistic, may see such a relationship not so much as an immediate reality, but rather as a goal toward which they can grow, regardless of whether it is seen as something created or something destined from birth. Most individuals perceive a soulmate relationship as being preferable to just a relationship. It is somehow superior to what others have settled for. oftentimes much better than the kind of relationship in which we may currently be involved. After all, if more people had truly found their soulmate, wouldn't there be far less breakups and divorces? Just what is a soulmate? Where did the idea originate, and why are we so fascinated by the topic? In both myth and legend, the original concept of soulmates appears to be that at some point in the ancient history of the world, there occurred a fracturing or division of individuals. The human soul was somehow divided and separated into two components. Since that time, every individual has been searching for wholeness and her or his other half. According to the Greek philosopher Plato, humans are forever looking for their counterpart because they were once divided in half by the god Zeus. In Symposium, one of Plato's most famous dialogues, he states that the original human creation was somewhat different than at present. Originally, there were three kinds of human creatures: men, women, and individuals who were both sexes in one. Each of these creatures had 4 legs, 4 arms, 2 faces, 4 ears, and 2 sets of genitalia. Sometime after creation, humans apparently became arrogant and began to question whether or not humankind itself might take the place of the gods. Some even planned to climb Mount Olympus and displace the gods with themselves. The idea put the heavens in an uproar, and all of the lesser gods debated with Zeus as to what should be done. On the one hand, it would be relatively simple for the gods to destroy humankind, but on the other, the gods very much liked receiving offerings and tribute. If humanity ceased to exist, so too would the devotion. Finally, Zeus had an idea. He proposed dividing every individual in half. Not only would such an act cause the human creature to be only half as strong, but it would also double the number of humans. The gods would even have more individuals worshiping them. The plan was met with great enthusiasm by the gods, so each human was cut in half. The place where the two creatures had once been united was closed up, and a new creature was formed, one with 2 legs, 2 arms, 1 face, 2 ears, and 1 set of genitals. The plan worked. Unfortunately, the division left each individual with a deep longing for its other half. To help these poor creatures find some solace, Zeus enabled each half to have intercourse with another half, thus creating one whole. Those humans that had originally been only male would forever seek out another male with whom to join. The individuals that had originally been female would find comfort in the arms of another woman, and those creatures that had once been both male and female would seek after an opposite sex half, enabling the species to propagate itself. Although Plato's mythic account of humanity's division may appear far-fetched, it is not unique. A similar idea exists in Judeo-Christianity within the Old Testament. In the first chapter of Genesis, on the 6th day of creation, God fashions a creature in his own image. Male and female created he them. Genesis 1:27. In its origin, God's creation seems to be androgynous, containing both sexes in one, comprised of the essence of spirit. Not only are we told this creation is in the image of God, spirit, but after the 7th day of creation, when God rests, the Creator suddenly realizes that there was not a man to till the ground. In other words, the physical human creature came into existence after the soul. It was then that God decided to make the spirit creature a living soul and breathed into Adam's nostrils the breath of life, giving Adam his physical existence. Paralleling Plato's account, as God did not wish for this human creature to be alone, Adam's counterpart was created out of his side. And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and he took out one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof, and the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman. Genesis 2:21. As in Plato's story, the human creature was once whole, but was divided by the creation of its mate. Perhaps these accounts suggest that the human creature is imperfect and may only find some semblance of wholeness, whether literal or psychological, in relationships with other people. Several accounts of this separation of human beings also exist in rabbinical literature. The Midrash states that God originally created Adam two-faced before deciding to cut him in half into the male and female creature. Elsewhere, it is suggested that Adam was originally androgynous and contained both sexes in one. A corresponding idea is found in Hinduism, as the soul or oversoul became conscious of itself, desired companionship, and brought forth from itself the male and female counterparts. Perhaps the oldest written account of soulmates dates back approximately 5,000 years ago to the legend of the Egyptian gods Osiris and Isis. The story is one of eternal love, in which the male and female deities are described as brother and sister, as well as husband and wife, destined to be together. Osiris and Isis begin their connection in the womb, where they were conceived together and form which they emerged as twins. From birth, each is beloved to the other. Their love is so strong and binding that even death cannot quench their feelings or ultimately tear them apart. Stories from myth, fairy tale, and legend have continued to disseminate this idea that wholeness can only be found in another's half. It is part of the prince's search for the woman who wears the glass slipper in Cinderella. It is that perfect kiss that brings one back to life in Sleeping Beauty. It is beauty's love that causes the beast to become transformed. It is contained in the stories we know of frog princes who are awakened by love's kiss, and the need for Romeos to be with Juliets, all reminding us that there is something incomplete about the human condition. History itself often provides an idealized concept of relationships in the stories of Victoria and Albert, Hadrian's undying love for Antinius, and the lifelong connection between Alice B. Toklas and Gertrude Stein. All these tales suggest that personal wholeness is somehow found in relationship with another. There is no question that individuals are drawn toward one another, but what causes it? Is a chance meeting between two people simply accidental, or is it destined? Is that something biological, emotional, or intellectual? Or is it even more than we have perhaps allowed ourselves to imagine? Does fate play a role in our lives? Why are we drawn to certain relationships? And once we are in a relationship, why do we encounter challenges with the very people we have drawn to us at home, at work, throughout our whole lives? Just what are the dynamics of soul attraction? Unique answers to questions like these are found within the work of Edgar Cayce, one of the truly remarkable men of the 20th century. In 1938, a 58-year-old woman came to Edgar Cayce to inquire about her life's direction. Cayce, considered to be the most documented clairvoyant of all time, had already assisted the woman with a health condition. A former school teacher and counselor, the woman had been married and divorced. Interested in the possibility of another relationship, she asked Cayce an insightful question that connected the concept of soulmates with her own search for wholeness. She inquired, "Please explain for me what is meant by soulmate in relation to my own spiritual development." Cayce replied, in the 1556th reading, "Those of any sect or group where there is the answering of one to another, as would be the tongue to the groove, the tenon to the mortise, or in any such where they are a complement one of another. That is what is meant by soulmate. Not that as from physical attraction, but from the mental and spiritual help." From Cayce's perspective, the topic of soulmates was not of simply a physical or sexual attraction. Instead, it was a relationship inextricably linked to an individual's own process of personal growth and spiritual development. That premise is explored in much of the Cayce material. In fact, Cayce goes a step further and suggests that all of our relationships, even those that are often challenging and hard to endure, have the potential to promote wholeness within ourselves. In other words, ultimately we learn and grow from all of our relationships. Regardless of his documented talents as an intuitive, at first glance we might wonder what kind of insights Cayce's information can provide on the topic of contemporary relationships. After all, Edgar Cayce gave his last reading in 1944, and yet, because of the nature of his work and the questions asked of him by countless individuals, much like ourselves, Cayce may be uniquely qualified as an expert resource on the subject. If you go to the ARE website and just type in soulmate, you'll find so many incredible places that discuss soulmates. I recommend a book by Kevin Tedeschi called Edgar Cayce on Soulmates and Soul Companions, Relationships Through Time. It does a very good job of capturing some of the key elements of soulmates. Over a period of 43 years, Edgar Cayce gave intuitive consultations called readings to people from every religious background and all segments of society. In hundreds, if not thousands of instances, Cayce further explored how personal relationships interconnect with the soul's spiritual development. In fact, one of the undergirding premises in the Cayce information is that we most often come to know ourselves through our relationships with others, whether it is through learning about love in the face of someone we hold dear or growing in patience by the challenges we experience with another. It is through our interactions with others that we become aware of our shortcomings and our abilities. It is through our personal encounters that we come to realize what we need to work on, as well as the strengths we currently possess. Cayce believed that it was through the dynamics of our relationships that we grow in the awareness of our soul self and come to understand our ultimate connection to God. In fact, the Cayce material suggests that rather than finding wholeness in our relationships with others, it is through our ongoing relationships and literally lifetimes of experiences that the soul eventually grows to become whole within itself. The Cayce information presents a unique perspective on soulmates, contending that each of us has many soulmates. Edgar Cayce believed that these soulmate relationships not only manifest in intimate relationships, but in every imaginable relationship. We have soulmate relationships with family members, friends, co-workers, even individuals who may appear to be some of our greatest challenges. In fact, anyone but whom we have a strong emotional feeling, positive or negative, is in all likelihood a soulmate. These relationships might also be called soul companions, individuals with whom we have had a relationship before and will continue to pick up that relationship again in the future. Every individual who enables us to learn more about ourselves, becoming a better person in the process, is a soulmate. What may be the most invaluable about the Cayce information on relationships is that it provides a thorough analysis of hundreds of relationships played out within the framework of reincarnation. For more than 20 years and nearly 2,000 life readings, Cayce explored the spiritual development of individuals through various lifetimes and their corresponding past life connections to present-day relationships. For example, when inquiring about the past life connection with his present-day wife, a 35-year-old man was told, "Ye have been companions oft before in distress and in exaltations." From a source of information he called the Akashic Records, or the Book of Life, Edgar Cayce could view the development of relationships over time and describe how past life influences and choices impacted the present. More than simply providing individuals with some philosophical dissertation, his readings detailed practical advice and counsel that his clients were able to work with and apply. Taken together, the Cayce material on relationships constitutes one of the most significant sources of information on the dynamics of soul attraction and the purposefulness of our ongoing experiences with another. Another major concept within the Edgar Cayce readings that may be somewhat unique to this topic has to do with the importance of spiritual ideals. What is our overriding intent in our relationships with other people? Why do we do what we do? Do we try to be giving and loving in our interactions with others, or is our focus often one of selfishness? The importance of maintaining a spiritual ideal often plays out in our sexual relationships. On one occasion, case 1523, a woman was told that part of the reason that she had a reputation as the good time girl in the present was because she had been a prostitute in her most recent past life. In that life, Cayce told her that she had essentially used her body to get what she wanted. Her intent had been selfish, and that selfishness still needed to be addressed in her present experience. Ironically, on another occasion, case 1541, a woman with the reputation of being a loving angel and a joy to be around received a reading. Cayce told her that in her most recent past life she had also been a prostitute. However, instead of being selfish, her primary intent had been one of love. She had given the only thing she had as a means of providing companionship and comfort to lonely men. The first woman's ideal had been selfishness, and the second woman's had been love. The remnants of those ideals remained with the soul self. In terms of sex, Edgar Cayce generally put the approach back in terms of what was the person's ideal. In other words, a relationship based on sex alone was considered counterproductive to an individual's soul growth and development. However, a loving, compassionate, supportive relationship between two individuals with sex as an ingredient would not be considered problematic by the Cayce readings. It is important to remember that ultimately the soul is not male or female. Individuals often change sex from one lifetime to the next as a means of learning a myriad of lessons in soul growth. With reincarnation, every soul has had a myriad of lovers and sexual relationships. What the soul is held accountable for is not the sex act, but rather the intent of those relationships. Ultimately, soulmates and soul companions assist each individual in his or her spiritual development and the inevitable attainment of wholeness at the level of the soul. We are attracted to another person at a soul level, not because that person is our unique complement, but because by being with that individual, we are somehow provided with a learning experience. Through an ongoing process of relationships, experiences, and various lifetimes, the soul finds itself involved in a curriculum of personal growth and development. It is true that the destiny of the soul is one of wholeness. However, Edgar Cayce believed that every soul will eventually become whole within itself. There's a story of a woman named Rose that went to Edgar Cayce, and he helped her with a health problem. And then she went back for another reading, and he was telling her about a relationship with this person that she didn't necessarily like, but said that they had relationships in the past. And so he did a reading for the guy, and he asked what would be the result of a marriage between himself and Rose. And Cayce replied, "What they make it." Seeking greater specificity, he asked, "Is this girl the type of and quality of womanhood best suited to this man for a successful life?" And the answer came, "May be made so in each. No one is suited exactly in the beginning unless it has been foreordained through the ages of the mating of each again." Will they be perfectly happy always? Cayce replied, "No, they will not always be happy. But these may be always made content. Contentment and happiness are different elements, but both are of the mind, yet physical conditions must exist between each that these may be made compatible, or that the mind may be brought to that position wherein each may be content." In another reading, a 32-year-old sheet metal worker and his wife were having problems on and off again. During the course of their marriage, they had discussed divorce and custody issues related to their child. In an effort to improve their relationship, the husband obtained a reading. The information made it clear that they had been together before, had failed, and were being given the opportunity to help one another succeed in the present. The man inquired, "What can I do to make our marriage happier and harmonious?" And he was told, "Act toward the wife, or thine own activities, as ye would like her or others to act toward thee. Ask no more than ye give. Demand no more than ye allowed, or allowed to be demanded of thee. Marriage, such an association, is a oneness of purpose. Unless there is the oneness of purpose, there can be no harmony. This can be accomplished, not of self alone, for remember, you made a mighty mess in the experience before this. Ye suffered for it. Better make it up now, or it'll be 10 times worse the next time." From Cayce's perspective, the purpose of soulmates, marriage, or any lifelong commitment to another person is primarily to enable each individual to grow, to evolve, and to assist one another in spiritual development. To be sure, people are drawn together because of their joint experiences in the past. But what individuals do about those past life experiences, an influence which Cayce equated to karmic memory, is entirely dependent upon activities and choices in the present. The reading suggests that each individual has multiple soulmates with whom she or he can make a successful relationship. Obviously, each choice leads to different potentials and a lifetime of experiences, and some choices are ultimately better than others. In another example from the Cayce files, 2205, a woman was acquainted with 4 different men, all of whom had expressed an interest in being with her. A math teacher by profession, she wanted to know which of the 4 would make the best marriage candidate. She was told that it was incorrect to think that there was only one individual who would make her ideal mate. In fact, Cayce refused to tell her to keep away from this one or to be joined together with that one. Instead, he confirmed that in different periods in the earth, she had previously been with all 4 of her suitors, some as helpers, some as hinderers. He suggested that she needed to watch her dreams, for they had provided her with warnings about some of the men. As to which choice to make in the present, she needed to decide for herself which one would be better to enable her to become a better person, to express a spiritual ideal, and to live a life of service. The readings state that individuals are drawn to one another for purposeful experience. Essentially, that purpose is both to resolve issues and challenges that were created in the past, as well as to continue building upon the positive components that have been produced by being with one another. Good or bad, our relationships pick up exactly where we left them off. There's a continuity of former patterns, purposes, and ideals. The pull we may feel towards certain individuals in our lives occurs at the level of the soul, and according to Cayce, whether those former past life experiences were for weal or woe does not prevent the present-day attraction. Ultimately, whether or not it is best for two individuals to elevate their attraction to a lifelong relationship should be based upon something greater than physical attraction and desire. On numerous occasions, the Cayce readings did advise against an individual getting married to a certain person. In spite of the attraction a couple might feel for one another, if marriage was discouraged, invariably the reason was because the union would not be best for the spiritual development of either or both individuals. In other instances, marriage was advised against because of timing issues. In one case, parents of a 14-year-old girl were told that their daughter would have the inclination to marry very early in life because she had been an old maid in her previous experience. The girl was encouraged not to follow through on her innate desire because it would become a disaster. On other occasions, individuals were told not to marry until they had made a clear choice about their life's direction. Apparently, each direction contained various possibilities of potential spouses. A 20-year-old woman asked whether or not she should marry her present boyfriend, and the response was never. Cayce predicted that the relationship would inevitably lead to separation and divorce. He stated that she had known him in her most recent lifetime during the American Revolution. At the time, around the area of Williamsburg, Virginia, the two had begun a relationship that had entailed experiences of both disappointment and happiness. Because there were some unresolved issues from the past, the woman felt an emotional desire to become even closer to him. The reading advised against it. Cayce warned, "It would be best never to marry him. The ideals will be destroyed." She was encouraged to maintain their friendship and to learn what they could from each other, but not to marry. Since desire, attraction, and love might all originate at the level of the soul, how can individuals distinguish between a potential long-term relationship and one in which there is simply an attraction in order to work through something from the past? Cayce suggested that true love was ultimately best expressed as giving in action, where one was not concerned with what was received in return, whereas desire is a feeling or a condition in which an individual wants to draw someone or something to himself or herself. True love is an expression of emotion, energy, or activity that goes out to others without thought of what self receives in return. Ultimately, the purpose of all relationships is spiritual development, and for that reason, individuals wishing to discern between a karmic relationship or a purposeful present-day union might ask themselves, does this relationship make me a better person? Does it challenge and stretch me? Does it encourage me to become a more balanced, giving person? Does this relationship bring out the very best within me? Can I help this individual grow just as he or she will help me? A 29-year-old man asked Edgar Cayce to describe the best motives for marriage. In reading 1173, he stated there was a vast difference between physical desire versus mental, spiritual cooperation and companionship. If a marriage was based primarily upon desire and physical gratification, it could not succeed. Instead, a successful relationship had to contain a joint spiritual prompting that united the couple in service to one another as well as to others. Cayce believed that a healthy relationship included physical love, but it was much more. Spiritual ideals and mental goals and aspirations were equally important. Too often, individuals may believe there is one perfect soulmate that exists just for them. That is not the case. The condition of soulmates is also not limited to male-female relationships. Soulmate relationships are just as likely to occur in same-sex relationships. More importantly, each of us has many different types of soulmate relationships. Some of those relationships might manifest in the present with various members of our family, friends with whom there is a deep bond and connection, and even within work relationships where individuals are brought together to achieve some greater goal. These relationships can also be challenging. A soulmate is an individual to whom we are drawn in the present because we have been together in the past. It is a relationship in which each individual has the opportunity to be of invaluable assistance in terms of the other's personal growth. Unfortunately, some individuals have mistakenly assumed that a soulmate relationship is a perfect relationship in which there are never any challenges or difficulties. They may become frustrated because they haven't been able to find or create such a relationship in their own lives. The Cayce reading suggests that a soulmate will offer you problems and obstacles just as you will offer the same things in return. A soulmate is someone with whom you can work through life's challenges and difficulties, even when that individual may appear to be the source of them. In other words, a soulmate is an individual who often reflects or lets us encounter our own strengths and weaknesses. Referring back to the relationship I mentioned earlier between Bryant and Rose, they had a very successful soulmate relationship that lasted 40 years until Bryant's death in 1968. However, they also had their share of problems and arguments and difficulties. Together they experienced the normal ups and downs of any marriage. From the very beginning, they were burdened with the knowledge that Bryant's mother didn't like Rose as his choice for a spouse, and the readings eventually traced the animosity to a past life jealousy and rivalry. In another example, a 39-year-old housewife, mother, and bookkeeper was told that she and her husband were making great strides in meeting and overcoming those shadows of patterns that had been created between them in the past. By working together, each was growing spiritually, each was developing, and their soulmate relationship was becoming more positive. They were encouraged to continue as they were, for each may be as a help as a prop for the other. Cayce told another couple that it would take them at least 10 years to create an ideal relationship, but it would be theirs if they worked together. A young couple contemplating marriage was told that as man and wife, they had the opportunity to be very helpful to one another. Apparently, they had been together many times previously in various relationship roles. During a lifetime in Persia, they had been conflict because the two had come together under false pretenses. In ancient Egypt, they had been raised with opposing belief systems, although they had learned to work together. As a result, in the present, Cayce told them, they each then have that weakness of being able to be overpowered by the personality of the other. He advised them to cooperate with each other for the benefit of both. Then if there is the agreement, if there is the coordination of ideals and purposes, and making same work, it can be made a beautiful companionship. They were reminded it also can be made to be the belittling of one or the other. A young New York lawyer obtained a reading about his pending marriage with his fiancée. He sought spiritual guidance, matrimonial happiness, and advice, which would enable the two of them to live successful lives. Cayce told the couple that as long as they kept their present feelings uppermost in their minds, they would be successful, for their minds, their bodies, their desires are in the present in accord. They were encouraged to remember that unison of purpose whenever dissension and strife arose in their marriage, because compatibility and happiness needed to be created, did not simply exist. They were told to become a complement one to the other. Cayce warned the couple they would become divided in purpose if either became self-centered or gave in to selfish motives, rather than remembering the importance of their relationship. From that day forward, they needed to learn to be able to depend on each other. When the young man asked, do they genuinely love each other? Cayce replied, in the present, remember each, love is giving. It is a growth. It may be cultivated or it may be seared. That of selflessness on the part of each is necessary. Remember, the union of body, mind, and spirit, in such as marriage, should ever be not for the desire of self, but as one. Love grows, love endures, love forgiveth, love understands. Love keeps those things rather as opportunities that to others become hardships. Then do not sit still and expect the others to do all the giving, nor all the forgiving, but make it rather as the unison and the purpose of each to be that which is a complement one to the other ever. Even as a young boy, Edgar Cayce had a recurring dream which seemed to suggest the importance of this unison of purpose in his own eventual marriage. In the dream, Edgar was walking through a glade with a woman standing next to him holding his arm. The woman was wearing a veil so that he could not see her face, but they seemed very much in love. While walking, they arrived at a little stream filled with clear, sparkling water. They stepped over the stream and began walking up a hill where a man stopped to meet them. Dressed only in loincloth, he was the color of bronze. On the man's feet and shoulders there were wings. He appeared to be Mercury, the Roman messenger and god of communication. Mercury told the couple to join hands, which they did. Across their united hands, the man placed a long piece of golden cloth and stated, together, all can be accomplished, alone nothing can be accomplished. Suddenly, Mercury disappeared, and Edgar and the woman continued walking. Eventually, they came to a road that was very muddy, and the two wondered how they would be able to cross it. In the midst of their confusion, Mercury appeared again and told them to join hands and to use the golden cloth. They joined hands, waved the cloth over the road, and immediately the mud dried and the road became passable so that they could continue their journey. The first time the dream occurred was years before Edgar had even met Gertrude Cayce, whom he would marry. When he had the dream, Edgar Cayce's mother told him that the dream meant he would achieve a great deal when eventually united with his wife. Although he was married in 1903, the dream continued to occur. Finally, in 1926, when Cayce had the dream again, a reading was obtained to its meaning. The reading stated that the dream was apt to occur whenever challenges or significant changes occurred in his life. As soulmates, Edgar and Gertrude Cayce had been together on a number of occasions in various relationships in the past. As a couple, as parent-child, as friends, as guardians. According to the readings, a primary purpose for their lives this time around was to focus their joint efforts into the psychic work that became Edgar Cayce's life calling. In fact, it was suggested that the information obtained from his psychic readings was very similar in scope to information he had disseminated thousands of years previously during a lifetime in Egypt. While in Egypt, Edgar Cayce had been a high priest, and Gertrude his wife and a priestess. At that time, Gertrude had acted as a spokesperson to the masses of the people, even when her husband became too ill to perform his duties. Apparently, the work they had begun together needed to continue. In this life, Edgar Cayce was also extremely dependent on Gertrude. Before she took on the responsibility for conducting the readings, there had been occasions when he had been repeatedly taken advantage of while in the psychic state. Individuals had done such things as stick a hat pin into his cheek to make certain he was really in a trance. Others had requested health readings only to acquire betting tips for the horse races unbeknownst to Cayce while he was asleep. As long as his wife was present for a reading, Edgar Cayce was confident that nothing could go wrong. Both Cayce and his wife received frequent assistance in their own lives from the readings as well. Gertrude was cured of tuberculosis, and Edgar received ongoing guidance about a variety of topics, including his work, his health, and a lifelong issue with stomach problems. Their lives together were dedicated to Cayce's psychic work. It wasn't easy because so much of the material seemed unusual. On the night before he died, Gladys Davis, Cayce's secretary, witnessed a final scene between the couple that so moved her she made note of it in the Cayce archives. Edgar Cayce was very weak and very ill. He was lying in his bed and his wife reached over to kiss him. What follows are Gladys's observation as she recalled the dialogue between Gertrude and Edgar. He said, "You know I love you, don't you?" She nodded and he asked, "How do you know?" "Oh, I just know," she said with her dear little smile. "I don't see how you can tell, but I do love you." Reflecting, he continued, "You know, when you love someone, you sacrifice for him. What have I ever sacrificed because I love you?" The bedside scene was so beautiful that it made Gladys cry because she understood so well how Gertrude had stood by him and put his wishes always above her own when it came to the good of the work. We've only scratched the surface of this, and the Cayce material on Soulmates provides an extraordinary account of the continuous process of growth and development we experience from the various relationships we attract into our lives. These same individuals have been our soul companions, coming to us in all manner of relationships, and as spouses, as children, as friends, as co-workers, some of our biggest challenges. They have existed in every imaginable time period of our soul's journey. They have been there to help us, just as we have been there to help them in return. What may be most astonishing about this ongoing learning process is what it suggests about the nature of the soul, our interconnectedness with one another, and how all of humankind is ultimately connected to the Creator in ways we have yet to imagine. One of the most complex and misunderstood topics within the Cayce material is the concept of twin souls. Oftentimes people who discuss the term believe it suggests two individuals who are separate halves of the same soul somehow need to find one another to regain their wholeness. Individuals who received readings asked Edgar Cayce where they might find their twin soul, or whether or not their current spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend was a twin. Sometimes these same individuals use such terms as twin rays or twin flames interchangeably to describe the very same thing. In one instance, a 27-year-old woman who had been told of two past life connections with her present husband, one as Egyptian and one as Incans, wanted to know whether or not the two were twin souls. Cayce replied that there are identical souls, no, No two leaves of a tree, no two blades of grass are the same. The reading went on to suggest that she and her husband were soul companions and would be complements to one another whenever they worked together with a united purpose. More than anything else, this unity of purpose is what best describes Cayce's concept of what is at the heart of a twin soul relationship. Rather than being primarily a sexual relationship or some kind of romantic entanglement, the Cayce reading suggests that the focus of a twin soul relationship is one of shared purposes and ideals. Twin souls come together in order to fulfill some important work that they have in common. Oftentimes, a twin soul relationship manifests not as a romance, but as two people being brought together for a specific purpose. The readings often point to various parent-child relationships as being that of twin souls. For example, Cayce stated that Jesus of Nazareth and his mother Mary were twin souls. Somehow, by being together, twin souls can assist one another in achieving their joint mission in life. In my own experience, I have an amazing wife, and I definitely have what I consider to be a soulmate. We have our disagreements, but together, I'm able to do so much more than I would be able to do if I was alone. Together, she helps me and I help her. And this unity of purpose has helped me on my own spiritual path. I know that everybody's story is a little bit different. I know that many of you are seeking out that soul companionship. And this is all just one perspective. I would love to get your perspective. This is not an absolute. There are lots of ways to look at these relationships between souls. I feel like I'm a soulmate to everyone that's listening. I feel like I have a soul relationship with the people I'm talking to, even though we haven't met. I know you, I care about you, I love you, and I've had experiences with you all in the past. I think that sometimes there's soul families that come together, and I believe that the Reality Revolution is an example of this. So please share your own experiences with soulmates and twin flames and what your own perspective is, because this is just one perspective, and I want to get yours because I learned from you. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com, and welcome to The Reality Revolution.